Web Marketing That Works podcast, episode 115, with today's guest, Kate Erickson, the author of The Fire Path.
Welcome to the Web Marketing That Works podcast. Come behind the scenes of real-life marketing experiments and listen in as amazing guests confess the truth about what really works. Now, here are your hosts, Adam Franklin and Toby Jenkins.
My name's Adam Franklin, and you are listening to the Web Marketing That Works podcast. This is the show for people like you and like me who love marketing on the web. And I'm so pleased that you could join me today because we are going to hear from Kate Erickson, the author of the book, The Fire Path, and you may know her as co-founder of the Entrepreneur on Fire podcast, as well as host of Kate's Take. But more about her in a sec. On the Web Marketing That Works show, we are going to take you behind the scenes of real-life marketing experiments. We'll look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. We confess what's failed, and we reveal the truth about what really works. The show is brought to you by the book that Toby and I wrote, and it is also called Web Marketing That Works. And there is a free gift for you, our listener, and that is the 33 free templates. And they are part of the book, but you can get your hands on the templates themselves for free if you head over to bluewiremedia.com.au/book, and they are all yours. Okay, so today's guest is, as I mentioned earlier, Kate Erickson. She is the co-founder of the Entrepreneur on Fire podcast that she runs with her partner, John Lee Dumas. She is the host of her own podcast called Kate's Take, and she is the author of The Fire Path, a beginner's guide to growing your online business. In 3 short years, Entrepreneur on Fire, or EO Fire as it's now known, has gone from being the new kid on the block to essentially top of the pops. They've notched up thousands of episodes, they get millions of downloads each and every month, and they've been able to grow it into a multi-7-figure online business. Now, Kate is on the show today to talk about that journey. I've got a whole bunch of questions that I had jotted down when I was reading the book, The Fire Path. And as you'll discover on the show, the journey they've been on is incredible, but it doesn't necessarily have to be complex or difficult. They show that with some focus and some clear goals and actually just executing, this sort of success is achievable for everybody. So with that introduction, let's head over to the show. It's Adam Franklin here, and on the line I have Kate Erickson. How are you, Kate?
Hey, Adam. How's it going? I'm super excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
It's an absolute pleasure. And congrats on the book, The Fire Path. I have finished reading it, and it is fantastic. So congratulations there.
Thank you. I was so honored to receive an email from you about that. So I really appreciate it. Thanks.
I really liked it because you've obviously got a successful business with Entrepreneur on Fire. And the way you've written the book, you share all your secrets, but it comes across, it's approachable, it's easy to understand. And I think one of the main things I got from it was that it is simple, but it's not necessarily easy. Like there's nothing necessarily complicated about what you've done, or at least the way you've explained it is so logical and makes so much sense. But of course, actually executing it is the difficult part. And one of the first things that I wanted to discuss with you today is the concept of avatars, because I know you talk a lot about it in the book, and I often refer to them as buyer personas, but essentially avatar is the same thing. But I know you had an interesting story when you were in your early days and you were trying to appeal to people to read your material and to engage you with your early business. And that evolved once and got a lot more traction once you actually worked out your avatar. So I'm just hoping you can talk us through that realization and that early journey for us, Kate.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, I'm really glad that you felt that, the way the book was written was super easy to understand. Well, simple, you described it beautifully. Simple, but not easy, right? Because the hard part is actually taking the action to implement the things that I discussed throughout the book. So that's what I was really going for with the book, is to express to people in a way that it wasn't overwhelming or intimidating, the actual steps that you need to take. But, trying to lay it out in such a way that people could understand, I could do this. I just need to put a plan in place, be able to follow the steps here by setting aside and creating the space for myself to do that. So I'm really glad that you felt that way about it. And yeah, so my avatar story is definitely one of those things where you hear people say a lot, you'll learn that through experience. And the avatar was definitely one of those things for me. Because when I first started as an entrepreneur, I started my own business called Kate's Copy. And really what I was trying to do is help brick and mortar small businesses grow their business by bringing themselves online, being able to reach a wider audience outside of just, the people within a 10-mile radius of them. But I had a really, really hard time expressing that. And I very distinctly remember chatting with my business coach at the time. And one of the tough questions that she asked me is, who wants your services? Like, who wants to hire you? And I couldn't tell her. I didn't know how to describe the person that would want or need my services. And I really struggled with that for a long time. But I thought, you know what? It can't be that important. If I just keep going and I keep building relationships and I keep networking and I keep putting myself out there, eventually I'm going to find who that person is. And when I do find them, then, I'll get my first client and then I can just build it from there. But that didn't happen. I never got my first client. And through that experience, I realized very, point blank that the reason I couldn't get a client is because I didn't know who they were. And so, stressing the point of defining your avatar in the very beginning, or even if you've been doing your business for a long time and you just kind of feel like you struggle with really connecting with the right person, your ideal client or your buyer persona, as you describe it, it's so integral to the growth of your business.
And how much do you find, say, the buyer persona might change throughout a business journey? Because I certainly really liked that section in your book, because when Toby and I started Bluewire, it was a very different business to what it is now. And back in the early days, we were, I guess, predominantly an agency, and we were looking at working with corporate marketing managers who would actually hire us to do a whole lot of the website builds, the ongoing marketing and social media management and everything like that. But as our business has evolved into being more of a training and education company, then it's turning out to be a lot more digital marketing consultants that are using our material and buying our IP so that they can then actually do the work themselves. So it's been interesting from my personal journey that the buyer, or our primary buyer persona or our primary avatar, has actually changed a little bit over the years as the business evolves. How often do you recommend revisiting these buyer personas, and how much leeway have you got to sort of tweak and adjust that avatar?
Well, Adam, I'd love to hear if you agree with me on this point or not, but I really think it's something that every day is constantly evolving in one way or another, because as a business owner, as somebody, starting an online venture or even a brick and mortar venture, whatever it might be, you should constantly be looking for and inviting and engaging with feedback that you get from whoever is visiting your website or, happens upon your shop. That is, constantly giving you one more step in the direction of, meeting your avatar face to face or online, I guess. But, to your point, who you started out talking to isn't necessarily who you're talking to today, but you only figured that out through putting it out there, through having those conversations, through starting to offer content to a specific type of person. And in doing that, you were able to discover and kind of grow into what you now offer and who you offer that to. So, did you kind of discover that in the beginning, it was kind of constantly a game of, looking and listening for feedback and then figuring out whether or not how you were talking about your business or how you were talking about what you had to offer was, constantly changing, really?
It certainly was, Kate, because one of the things that we discovered early on is that there's a big difference between the attributes of, say, a corporate marketing manager versus a business owner, founder / CEO. And we thought, well, they're both going to be interested in the same types of things and have the same fears and the same goals. But in actual fact, the buying decisions and the triggers that made them buy or not buy were vastly different. And in this situation, corporate marketing managers, really one of the driving things for them is not rocking the boat too much, not losing their job, and not, stuffing things up. There wasn't actually as big a desire to see marketing results and to get a tangible ROI, that didn't matter as much as sort of hanging on to their job and not rocking the boat. Whereas, say, like a business owner who's an entrepreneur and a founder, they were much more interested in actually just getting straight into it and doing stuff. And they were much more driven by achieving an ROI. And, back in the earlier days, that was a big revelation for us that we actually had two distinct buyer personas. One was Nicola, the corporate marketing manager, and I'd say one was Brett, the founder, CEO, and the language that we use with those different avatars or buyer personas was vastly different. And you're right, it was through actual feedback, through talking with our clients and prospective clients, that we really got to understand what made them tick, and to then tailor the marketing message to each of those groups was a big revelation for us. So absolutely, day by day, we would discover more and more about them.
Yeah. And I mean, really the beautiful part about it is like in what you just described is once you do, meet that person, once you do know exactly who they are, then it just makes the decisions that you're making in your business a whole lot easier, because once you know, did you say Nicola?
Yeah.
Yeah. Once you know Nicola, like you don't have to guess as to what it is that she wants and needs. You know her, you've chatted with her. That is your avatar. So if you're sitting down to write a blog post and you're wondering whether it should be 500 words or 5,000 words, well, I don't know. What's Nicola up to in the middle of the day when she's looking at blog posts? Does she want to read something that's 5,000 words, or is, her schedule kind of crazy managing all these different things? Maybe you write a shorter post that's really packed with, bullet points and stuff so that she could get through it quickly, because that's the way that she consumes content best. When you understand who your avatar is that deeply and you intimately know what their struggles are, what their pain points are, and what their biggest dreams are, that's when it gets so much easier for you to start creating exactly what it is that they want and need, because you know.
That's such a good point, because we released a whole bunch of marketing templates and have done over the years, and we found that they got so much more traction compared to, say, like an ebook. And for a while, we were wondering, I wonder why that is. There's more meat in an ebook than just a template. But then exactly that, we realized that Nicola doesn't have much time in her day, and neither do entrepreneurs necessarily. And they just want something easy that they can put into practice, and they don't have to add to their tower of guilt of all the things that they've downloaded that they haven't actually read yet. So yeah, we sort of stumbled upon the fact that templates worked really well with the people in our audience. And so we've continued down that path.
Beautiful.
You mentioned listening to your audience, which makes so much sense. But how are you actually doing this? Like you've mentioned listening to what they say in emails that come back, but what are some of the actual things that you do? Like, is it surveys, or is it phone calls, or meetups, or what are some of the actual actionable things there that listeners can try and emulate?
Sure. I think that it kind of spans like based on where you're at in your business. If you feel like you're just starting out right now and you don't really have an audience, so you're thinking to yourself, well, how am I going to listen to them? Then I think it's really important to join maybe one or two online communities that are in your industry or niche where your avatar is hanging out. So if you are offering services to like marketing consultants or agencies, then, go to Facebook or go to LinkedIn where you know that your ideal audience is hanging out. You might not know exactly who your avatar is yet, but you have a business idea. So you at least know what topic or category you're going to be serving. And when you can find those online groups to be a part of and get in there and start engaging and providing value to people, you're going to start seeing people post questions. You're going to start seeing people, share struggles or even share wins, things that make them super excited and fired up, like exactly what they're looking for in their business. And that is a really good way to quote unquote listen to your audience. I think because we say listen to your audience, and one of the main examples of that is maybe, somebody responding to an email, people forget about the indirect feedback that we can be getting in so many different places, online communities being one of them. It doesn't necessarily have to be somebody responding to your post and asking you a direct question. It might be somebody telling a story and expressing, a big hurdle that they overcame. That hurdle is indirect feedback. Whatever it is that was holding them back is indirect feedback for you that you need to then take and evaluate. Is this something that I could provide a solution for? Or is this something that I feel I want to serve my audience and help them get past? So online communities is a great way to start if you don't feel you already have an audience yet. I love the phone calls for people who do have even the smallest audience. I mean, if you have an opt-in up on your website or you have a social media following and putting it out there, I've seen a lot of people have great success with an email opt-in and then a thank you page that serves the option to sign up for a chat. So Adam, say I go to your site and I download, the top 5 pieces of marketing advice or whatever it might be. Then I get a thank you page and it says, hey, Kate, that's awesome that you're interested in these marketing ideas. What do you say we jump on a 10-minute chat and I can see how I could serve you further? Then Adam, you have me on the phone, somebody who's just downloaded your ebook. So you've already kind of pre-qualified me as somebody that's somewhat interested in what it is that you have to offer. And once we get on the phone together, you're going to be able to ask me questions and get priceless insights from me about, what it is that I'm struggling with right now, or what it is that I wish I could have downloaded on your site that I didn't get to download because I didn't see it. So I think phone calls can be really, really powerful in getting closer to understanding what expertise and skills you have, knowledge that you could serve other people with.
Wonderful. It's such a good point about those phone calls because we hadn't done them extensively in the early days, but now that we're selling online programs and we've got our book and there's an audience of people all around the world who we don't necessarily get to see in meetings or whatever, it's a different business model these days. But Toby, my business partner, he started calling, or at least if they didn't pick up leaving messages, but calling all of the people that bought our book through our website. And we call people who join our courses to give them a welcome call. And it was fascinating because from, as you say, a 10 or 15-minute phone conversation, not only do they think it's impressive that you bothered to call them, but the actual market research that you can get through asking questions and hearing about the struggles and aspirations of the people that have actually already bought something from you is really, really powerful. So I'm so pleased that you brought that up because it doesn't matter if you've got a small audience or a big audience. Picking up the phone and talking to your actual avatar or the people that represent your avatars and your actual customers and subscribers is very, very valuable.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I also love how you're saying always looking for ways that you can serve your community or serve your audience. Now, obviously, when you launched some of your early products, you had some feedback from the market. People were asking questions, you were listening in, you were doing telephone conversations. Now, talk us through the early days of launching Podcasters Paradise, because in your book, you said you launched it in 2 weeks, which is absolutely super fast, and I admire that a lot. But talk us through how you were able to decide on something and launch it so quickly.
Well, it was definitely, the 2-week period that we really kind of used like the Scrum method to get that site up and live. But there were, of course, months before that where we had been doing just that, getting on the phone with people and listening to the feedback we were getting in emails. What was really beautiful about Podcasters Paradise, which really wasn't super intentional on our part, but it worked out really, really well for us, is one of John's first products that he ever put out there was an ebook on Amazon called Podcast Launch. And it was simply walking through the step-by-step of how to create and launch a podcast. We got so many amazing emails and some really, really great feedback, like on social media, about that book. And from people who were saying, this information is so helpful. It's helped me launch my podcast. Thank you so much for this. But, then came the questions of, well, what's next? Like, I launched my podcast. Your book helped me do that. Thank you so much. But, now I'm done with my 8 weeks in New and Noteworthy and my downloads have kind of flatlined. I'm not really sure how I should be promoting this or sharing it with people. Like, how do I grow an audience for my podcast? How do I start, monetizing from my podcast? What if I get a sponsor that reaches out to me? What do I say to them? What do I charge them? How do I decide if it's the right fit for, my audience and for me as a podcaster? And these were all the types of questions that we were hearing from people over and over and over again. Now, we had just recently had great success with starting an elite mastermind tribe. And we found through launching that online mastermind tribe that one of the biggest things for people in that group, one of the things that they liked most about the membership was the community aspect of it. People were so hungry for support, to know that there's other people out there that were going through the exact same things that they were. People that they could, jump into a Facebook group and say, guys, I'm really struggling with this right now. Do you have any advice for me? And seeing how important that community aspect was, we knew that as we were building Podcasters Paradise and we were gathering all these most frequently asked questions and, the things that people were coming to us and asking us the most, it couldn't just be that. Like, we couldn't just give people video tutorials. We wanted to create a community around this so that people who are starting out with their podcast, people who are trying to grow their podcast, there's a lot of fear there. And there's a lot of people who know that they have incredible knowledge to share, and they see what a podcast can do to help them grow their business and build an intimate connection with their listeners. But they're scared to put themselves out there. That community part of it was something that we pulled along with us. And as we did our proof of concept webinar, which I also talk about in the book, which was us just basically inviting this list of people who had expressed interest in podcasting to us before to say, come join us on this webinar. We're going to talk about how to create, grow, and monetize a podcast. And we have something really cool to share with you, which is an idea about a community we'd love to create, but we don't want to create it unless you really want it. And that was kind of like the lead up to creating Podcasters Paradise. And even on that live webinar, that proof of concept webinar that we did, we were literally telling people, if you come on this journey with us, if you become a founding member of Podcasters Paradise today, which we have not built at all, like we've not done one thing for this yet, we've just gathered ideas and, we kind of have a picture in our head of what this might look like. But we really want you to help us create this because we're creating it for you. We want to give you all the tools and the resources and the community really to help support you on your journey. So as we were building it in those 2 weeks after we got, our founding 50, 100 members, it was a lot of feedback from them that helped us create different aspects of the membership.
Wow. I remember those early days when you were getting your founding members together for that. So it's so cool to see your journey from those early days, building it with your interested audience. And I think that is so powerful that you built it with them and you invited them on that journey to go on the journey with you, because I've certainly made the mistake of building products without doing that step. And I thought there'd be like an automatic translation from, say, what we taught to corporate clients to people wanting that information in the form of an online course. And sometimes it worked okay, sometimes it didn't. But actually going through that process of building it with people is something that I've been learning more and more is such an important step in the process. And obviously it's proven very effective with what you've done with Podcasters Paradise. So you've launched it in 2 weeks. Obviously, you've done all the preliminary listening part, but obviously you need to be very focused and disciplined in terms of, saying no to other things. And in the book, you talk a lot about removing distractions and focusing on one thing, which you've obviously done for that story you just told. But now that you've grown and you're several years into this journey and you're very well known, is that getting harder to do these days with all the opportunities that must come your way and all the people in your network that know what you do and want to collaborate with you? Like, is that harder now than the early days or easier?
It's absolutely harder. There's so many amazing opportunities and it's tough to say no, especially, we've built so many incredible relationships with a lot of really amazing people, and it's tough to not be able to say yes to every opportunity that comes our way. But, it's so important to stay focused on the goals that you've set for yourself and for your business. And, going back to your previous question, how did you launch Podcasters Paradise in 2 weeks? I didn't really get into like the tactical things that we did or the steps that we took. But, I can kind of carry that into, responding to your question right now and saying that for Podcasters Paradise, like that focus that we had to launch that was solely based on our goal to launch a podcasting community in 2 weeks. We gave ourselves a deadline. We were super specific with what it was we wanted to accomplish. So even though we were receiving amazing opportunities throughout those 2 weeks to, do maybe a joint webinar or to participate in an online summit or something similar, I'm kind of just like pulling some examples, but we knew what our goal was in those 2 weeks. And we knew that if we said yes to these opportunities, we wouldn't be getting to our goal. And so you can kind of translate that really into any part of your business at any time on your journey. If you set SMART goals for yourself and you're able to keep your eye on those goals, it's going to be really easy for you to determine whether or not an opportunity is going to be right for you at that time. And that's not to say that it won't be right for you maybe at another time. But if we would have accepted, requests to be on online summits or requests to do joint webinars during that time that we were head down working on launching Podcasters Paradise, we wouldn't have gotten there. And, what would our business look like today if we would have just kind of dropped the ball on launching Podcasters Paradise? It would be drastically different. So I really encourage people to think about that, how important setting SMART goals is and how important it is for you to look at every opportunity and really ask yourself that tough question. Even though this is an amazing opportunity and I really, really want to take it, is it going to help me get one step closer to my goals? And if the answer is no, then it probably shouldn't be something that you're putting your time and bandwidth into. Now, when you're very first starting out in your business, I really think that, there's not a whole lot that you should be saying no to. When we first launched EO Fire, we were saying yes to pretty much anything and everything. You've got to get that initial momentum going. You've got to put in that time to build relationships, even if it might not seem like an amazing opportunity at the time. Maybe it's something that is going to help you grow in that area, hone your skills and speaking or whatever it might be. So I think that there's also, something to be said of where are you in your business right now? And are these opportunities going to help you grow? Or are they opportunities that you should be putting up against your SMART goals?
It's so interesting that you say that you should be asking yourself, is this opportunity going to help me get one step closer to my goals? Because my business partner, Toby, was recently talking to these up-and-coming athletes. And Toby went to the 2004 Olympics in the Australian water polo team. And he's been mentoring a few of these athletes that are training for Rio. And basically, they said the sort of theme of the night was, what would you tell your younger self? And Toby basically said, assess every opportunity through that same lens. Is this going to help me get one step closer to my goal? And so if it's a choice between going out to a party on a Friday night or just going to bed early and being rested and ready for training in the morning, well, which one's going to help me get to my goal of the national team or the Olympics or whatever else? Well, it's an easy lens to be making your decisions through when you put it so simply. So fascinating that you've said virtually word for word exactly as Toby put it to those up-and-coming athletes.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. I mean, I think it's a really powerful thing to, when somebody said that to me, I definitely know that it really changed my outlook on a lot, because before it was more of like an emotional decision for me, I guess. I felt bad that I couldn't say yes to more. And one book that I've read that's been super powerful for this is Essentialism by Greg McKeown. And in that book, he talks about every time you say yes to something, you are saying no to something else. So really take a step back and ask yourself that, that exact question, is this going to help me get one step closer to my goals? And am I willing to say no to something else in order to take this opportunity? I think it could be I know that it's certainly changed a lot for me in our business this year.
Yeah, really cool. So let's talk about some of the things, marketing activities or web marketing activities that you've done to really help drive some of the phenomenal sales that you've seen with particularly the Podcasters Paradise course and community. First off, I guess I'd like to cover webinars. Now, webinars, I feel, also falls into that category of awfully terrifying before you actually do your first couple. There's so many things that not only are you putting yourself out there, but you're putting yourself out there in real time, and there's all manner of things that can go wrong in terms of technology, but not to mention you having to present at webinar and talk to people and all of that. So there's this incredibly big psychological barrier to get over, even more so than podcasting, I think, because it's live. and things can go wrong and it can be embarrassing and all of those horrible things that you think about before you do your first webinar. Firstly, what are some of the things that might have gone wrong so that other listeners can really go, okay, well, yes, there's some scary stuff, but it's worth pushing through. And then what are some of the results you've seen as a result of actually getting into like these regular webinars that you've run?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had some pretty crazy experiences on webinars before. And I think the biggest lesson that I've taken away from, everything happening from like an email going out at the wrong time, telling people that we're live on the webinar when we're not being able to get the webinar to actually go live. So we take a little bit of a different approach in the tools and the software that we use. We just use Google Hangouts on Air, and then we stream that through a lead page with a chat box. And, a lot of people who are doing webinars right now, you'll see them using like GoToWebinar or, a bigger software like that. And so there's definitely some risk in, using any software platform. I mean, no platform is foolproof, but, internet connection issues. We've had like John get dropped from a Google Hangout in the middle of a webinar. And the thing with using Google Plus Hangouts on Air and streaming that through a lead page is that if you get kicked out or dropped from a Hangout, chances are that you might have to restart a new Hangout, in which case we would have to actually be changing like an embed code on the site. So one time when we started a webinar, lead pages was down. So we actually had to change our short links so that we could host it on our own website and hope that we didn't crash our server. So, I mean, I could go on and on. There's been a lot of like little hiccups and mistakes and lessons learned. But what I've taken away from all of that, aside from the fact that we've made nearly $3 million on webinars in the past 2 years, is that our audience always understands. There's not been one time that any of the things that I've just mentioned have happened and people have sent us hate mail or they've not liked us anymore. That's a thing about the internet and about what we're doing here. The opportunity that we have to share knowledge and information with people whenever we want to is that people understand. Like when John gets dropped and he's gone for a minute, luckily I'm in the chat and I can still let people know, we're coming right back. John has an internet issue right now. And more often than not, people are actually kind of glad to see that because it lets them know that this could happen to anyone. You don't need to be afraid of like you being the only one that's going to have internet issues. Like everybody has internet issues. So yeah, I mean, Adam, to your point, we've pushed through a lot of these things and continued to do. We did weekly webinars throughout 2014. We've been doing bi-weekly webinars for all of 2015. And like I said, we've, grossed nearly $3 million as a result of live webinars, like direct revenue that we can attribute to hosting webinars.
It's really comforting that you say that your audience has been very forgiving when you do have these technical hiccups, and also very comforting that even the pros, even, you guys that do it so often can still encounter these technical problems. And I think that should just be, a little bit of peace of mind to people that might be thinking, should I get into these webinar things? They do seem awfully daunting. That yes, there will be challenges, but it's so nice to know that firstly, you guys have them too. So that's you're one of us. And then secondly, that people have been very understanding. So I think that should hopefully put people's mind at ease a little bit. So let's now compare, say, webinars to some of the email sequences or the free courses that you offer in terms of how they actually, contribute to sales further down the track, like your free webinar course and your free podcasting course, which are both, I think, 10-day email sequences that you send out. How are they performing in terms of, I guess, driving revenue and driving enrollments into your communities?
The free courses have been really, really incredible. It's a great introduction and sort of, getting to know you period with, say, like Facebook ads. It gives people the opportunity to see what it is that we have to offer and see how dedicated we are to sharing this information as openly as we possibly can. And then that way, when it comes time for us to introduce, the opportunity for people to invest in the community, it's not one of those like, whoa, we just met. Like, and your community is, today $1,400. It's tough to build a relationship that quickly to where like you might have a Facebook ad and people get on a webinar, and by the end of the webinar, they feel like they know, like, and trust you enough to invest that type of, money into whatever it is that you're offering. So I think that the free course has certainly helped us establish and build a relationship, have people get to know, like, trust what it is that we have to offer. The email courses come with videos too. So we're literally giving it all away. We don't hold anything back. We've had hundreds of people tell us that free podcast course helped them launch their podcast. So it's not like we give free podcast course, but then don't actually, help people get to launch. It's been really interesting to see how the two have kind of played with each other. So for example, if somebody comes into our world via free podcast course, they might, by the end of free podcast course, have joined Podcaster's Paradise. Or by the end of free podcast course, we're able to get them on a webinar, which maybe before they would not have signed up for a webinar. And then by the end of the webinar, they are investing in the community. So there's been lots of different scenarios where I see the two working really well together because, Adam, as you know, there's nothing quite like a live webinar to be able to introduce a community, introduce some type of, urgency, I guess you could say, in having people invest. So I would say overall, about 85% of our sales come on live webinars. So I think it's very safe to say that without our webinars, Podcaster's Paradise perhaps would have never become a community in the first place, but it certainly wouldn't be 2,800 members strong today. But since we've introduced that free course, I think that we could say our sales have even increased outside of the live webinar. So if you looked at our percentage of live webinar people joining the community versus non-webinar people, that's probably gone to maybe like 70-30 instead of 85-15 with the help of free podcast course.
Really cool. So they're working very well in tandem, but webinars still winning the lion's share of the business, which makes sense. You can see, you can hear, you can interact, and it's a logical ascension from an email/video relationship to then actually engaging and interacting with you live.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the next project that you've got on your plate, which is the Freedom Journal. How to accomplish your goal in 100 days. Can you talk us through that, what inspired it, what you're hoping to achieve with it, and
So John and I are incredibly excited about the Freedom Journal. It's our first physical product that we're going to be introducing to our community, and what we hope to be able to make an impact outside of our existing community as well, because really, like you said, Adam, the Freedom Journal is all about helping you accomplish your number one goal in 100 days. How the journal is set up is every single day and every single night, you're guided through exercises to help you set mini goals, to help you get one step closer towards your big goal, to have you reflect back on what's been working for you and what's not working for you. It's essentially an accountability partner to keep you, on your word of what you say you're going to do every single day to get to your number one goal. And it was inspired by John's now nearly 1,200 interviews that he's done with other entrepreneurs. After talking with that many successful people, it stood out to him, very bright that one of the main differences between successful entrepreneurs and those who haven't seemed to be able to get their business to take off is that successful entrepreneurs set and accomplish goals. And the number one thing that we see holding people back from accomplishing goals, because we can all set goals, it's quite easy to know or to think about what we would like to see in our life, what we would like to have in our business. But accomplishing them, we don't have accountability. We don't have somebody asking us, what did you do today to get one step closer to your goal? Or what are you going to do over the next 10 days to move yourself one step closer to your goal? So that's really what inspired the Freedom Journal. And that's what we are out to accomplish with it, is to help people not just set, but actually accomplish the goals that they say they want to meet.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to getting my hands on the Freedom Journal when it's out of production and shipped out. Kate, thank you so much for sharing all of your insights and stories on today's podcast. I know the Web Marketing That Works community is going to really appreciate it and get lots of value from that. Have you got any closing thoughts or anything else you'd like to get off your chest before we call it a day?
Adam, we've talked a lot about kind of maybe the fears that are circling around taking that next step forward in your business, whether it be with webinars or, putting out that first community or product. Just trust your gut. Follow your intuition with this stuff. I know that, deep down inside, we believe that we can do this. We just let external fears or, naysayers hold us back. And I'm really passionate about, spreading a message that helps people feel empowered to break through that fear and to really get to the goals that they say they want to accomplish. So if anyone's interested in checking out the Freedom Journal, you can head over to thefreedomjournal.com. And everything we do here at EO Fire is just over at eofire.com.
Awesome, Kate. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you have yourself a fantastic evening.
Thanks. You too, Adam.
All right. Cheers. And that's a wrap for my chat with Kate Erickson. I'm very pleased we got to have this conversation because I have followed their journey for a long time, and it's been interesting. I was on the Entrepreneur on Fire podcast way back in episode 92, and they're up to well over 1,200 interviews now, and it's been cool to see their journey unfold because, as I said in the show, they started as, or in the introduction I should say, they started as complete newbies and they've really burst onto the scene and now lead the way when it comes to all things podcasting and online business. So there's actually a lot to learn from the way they've done it as well. And, they're so generous with what they share, so transparent with how they do it, that it should be very inspiring and very reassuring that that type of success is entirely possible. But it does come down to execution and discipline and actually doing it. There's a big difference between knowing what you should do and actually doing it. And I hope if you're listening, it encourages you to get in there and give it a go, because with people like Kate and John online leading the way and paving the path for everybody else, it really is achievable. And if you follow what they have to say, then I'm sure, as many of their students can attest, that it is entirely possible. A couple of the take-home things that Kate shared with us today that really resonated with me was focusing on that one thing and saying no to everything else. And it was interesting, the extra dimension she added to that. It's not just saying no to everything else, but it's actually understanding that if you also say yes to something, in essence, you are saying no to a whole bunch of other things. So be really, really selective with what you say yes to. And that's certainly something that I have struggled with and continue to struggle with, is saying no to certain opportunities. I just want to say yes and be involved, but then I sometimes find myself squeezed for time and squeezed for resources when I'm trying to actually execute on all the things that I've taken on. So realizing that if I say yes to something, I'm saying no to a whole bunch of other things, and then to view it through the lens of, is this getting me closer to my goal? And that was one very valuable thing I learned from Kate and had reinforced from Kate in that interview. So I hope there was a whole bunch of nuggets of information that you also picked up. If you did find the podcast useful, and I hope you did, it'd be great if you could let us know with some private feedback. I'm adam.franklin@bluewiremedia.com.au, or public feedback too is also very much appreciated if you could leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher or SoundCloud. That would be super. And finally, don't forget that if you want our 33 free marketing templates from our book, you can download them at bluewiremedia.com.au/book. Thank you for listening all the way through to the end, and I will see you next time.